30 Odd Minutes is sponsored in part by Digital Dowsing. Who are you powered by?
For the next 30 minutes, we will explore the unexplained. From mysteries beyond our galaxy to ghostly phenomena in our own backyard. We will dive into our psychic abilities and explore everything from conspiracies to the just plain weird. Welcome to 30 Odd Minutes. If the truth is out there, we will find it. But only by sheer accident.
Hey! Welcome to 30 Odd Minutes. How are you?
All right, nice shirt.
Thank you for noticing. I appreciate that.
Hey, it fits.
Laundry day.
I want one.
You want one? All right.
Dude.
We have set the mothership down right in Manassas Battlefield in Virginia because tonight we're talking about United States Civil War ghosts. There are many haunted battlefields all over this great nation, and we're going to explore some of the history and some of the hauntings, and we have a great guest to do it. But first, I want to introduce the crew. Matt, have you met Andrew? Andrew? Matt? Nice shirts, guys. Seriously. Oh my gosh. This is embarrassing now. It's like we planned
No
this.
one got the memo.
It was you. All right.
And they glow in the dark.
Ew.
Yeah.
It would turn off the lights, but it would get
I
too
challenge anybody to go into a darkened room with me and I'll prove it.
These are great on ghost hunts, these shirts, because they do glow and you can keep track of where we are, which is good for you. I mean, keep that
It's
distance.
funnier when someone trips in the dark wearing them.
Yeah. It is. So what's new, guys? What's going on?
Well, I'm following up on a couple of local UFO sightings and stuff. Very, very good sightings with very credible witnesses. So that's
I thought the ship was cloaked. How did they see us?
Well,
Right. Cool. Well, we'll have to hear more about that, especially if you get some evidence coming forward. And, of course, Sarah in communications. Sarah, how are you tonight?
Yes,
Wait a minute. Nice shirt.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's awesome. I love it.
I'm happy to be back in Gettysburg because anyone that loves the paranormal or even history has to come to Gettysburg at some point in their life. It's like on the bucket list.
That's
So,
true, except
happy
we're
to be here.
we're in Virginia. Sorry. It looks a lot like it. Cannons and everything, I know.
I don't even know where we are half the time.
That's the Stone House behind you. Turn around and look. Get a good look.
All right.
Right, Stone
All
House.
right.
We will be talking about Gettysburg.
Got it.
All right. So what else is going on?
Oh, and I do want to say greetings to Cheshire TV in New Hampshire. Thanks for carrying the 30-odd signal each week.
Yay.
Woo!
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
I have an awesome email. I love this email so much, and even his email address, Lucky Ed's Flying Circus. It just brings good things. So, it says, Yo dudes, it's Ed from London. Thanks for making me chuckle. Chuckling's good, dude. It's been raining and cloudy for most of this year. It looks like the first Water Olympics is happening in good old Blighty. I looked that up, by the way. That's like slang for London or Britain.
Of course it is.
Good to know.
Woohoo! The sun's just popped out. First time since March. I'm off to get a tan. Wait, it's gone already. Keep up the good work, guys. Ed.
Yeah, you know what they
I
say?
worked on my accent, but I just couldn't get it right.
You know what they say in England? They treat the sun like a UFO.
That's right. Not everyone's seen it. All right.
they deny its existence.
All right. Hey, folks. Tonight, amazing show, amazing topic. One near and dear to my heart. When history leaves a mark, often hauntings follow. Nowhere is that more true than Civil War battlefields. They're haunted because they should be. In President Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, delivered November 19, 1863, just about 4 months after the battle, Lincoln said, "In a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. These battlegrounds aren't just haunted, they're haunting. And no one knows that better than tonight's guest. He's a former National Park Services Ranger. He's a historian, the author of many books, including his latest, Civil War Ghost Trails, Stories from America's Most Haunted Battlefields. He's been a guest on countless radio and television programs exploring the paranormal, and tonight he's back on the mothership to talk about history and hauntings. Please welcome, beaming to us live from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, Mark Nesbitt.
All right.
How are you, sir? Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, Mark, let's just jump into this. Is it disrespectful to imply that sacred battle sites are haunted by fallen soldiers?
Not at all. I think that sometimes historians might cut these fellows short in terms of their impact. And if indeed we do exist beyond this mortal plane, which so many people believe, then certainly they deserve some respect, even after what they did here is over.
Right, understood. I mean, I know we've talked about this stuff offline before, where it's one of those things where some people get it, some people get that ghosts can be a learning tool, a teaching tool, but some people just really get offended. Well, why do you think that is? Why is it, you run into those, and it's not everyone, but some people just to their core, how dare you imply that these battlegrounds are haunted, when President Lincoln himself in the Gettysburg Address pretty much implied, hollowed, these grounds are hollowed. What's the disconnect?
Well, not only Lincoln, but so many others believed in things. For example, there are countless premonitions that the soldiers themselves had prior to the Battle of Gettysburg, many of which came true in their death. Also, Joshua Chamberlain, the great Major General who fought at Gettysburg, he recounted a story of his Fifth Corps seeing the ghost of George Washington leading them into battle. And so years later, when they asked him about it, he said, well, doubtless it was a superstition. And then he paused a long time, and he said, yeah, but who among us can say that something like that couldn't happen? So a large number, and of course you had spiritualism. Lincoln himself had seances and had several mediums in the White House. So it's all part of the history of that era. I really don't understand why people, want to cut it off at a certain point,
right?
And says it just couldn't possibly happen. Now this just might be at Gettysburg because I know they have a special. They don't like ghost hunters very much, as far as the Park Service is concerned.
Sure.
Other places, however, are a little more lenient, a little more accepting of the theories that we have.
So tell me, how does a guy go from being a National Park Service ranger to a paranormal researcher? How did that happen?
Well, actually, I started having experiences when I worked for the Park Service.
Yeah.
They put me in 3 or 4 of the houses, historic houses, and I started to have experiences in the houses. So I'd ask around, and I talked to some of the older park rangers, and they said, oh, well, yeah, that's, I've heard about that in that particular house. And plus, did you hear this story about Devil's Den, or did you hear this story about Little Round Top? So I started jotting those down. And being a park ranger at Gettysburg is a lot of fun in the summertime because you have 1.6 million visitors coming. There's always something to do. There are always talks to give. However, in the wintertime, it gets a little boring. You're riding around in a car and lowering flags and opening and closing the cemetery. So I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. So I quit the park and started working as a freelance writer, which is what I always wanted to do.
Right.
And started doing work for some historical artists. In the meantime, I had the bunch of stories that I'd collected, the ghost stories. And about 1990, I approached the publisher. I said, are you interested? And he said, sure. So in 1991, the first ghost book came out. Within 2 weeks, I was getting letters and phone calls from people that were saying, hey, my neighbors are wrong. I'm not crazy.
No, that's right. And of course, I mean, the rest, as they say, you are Mr. Ghost of Gettysburg. You've run a tour there in town. So many Ghosts of Gettysburg books. We've seen you on lots of TV shows talking about this subject, and it just goes on. And I know you become a magnet. Like you said, once you put yourself out there as a collector of these tales, of these stories, everyone wants to tell you their ghost story. And the job gets easier, right? I mean, in some respects.
It really does. I mean, you do have to analyze the stories, each and every one of them, a little bit more. But no, and it's interesting. Now with Facebook, I've gotten 3 or 4 stories over Facebook. Of course, that never happened back in the 90s when I was collecting the first stories. We barely had fax machines then.
Yeah. No, it's great stuff. And I always tell aspiring writers, becoming a freelance writer, that's one of those jobs that you get simply by waking up one day and going, I'm a freelance writer.
That's right.
Getting paid
that's
for
right.
it and the rest of the gigs. Is that the bat phone ringing?
That's our phone, but that's okay.
All right, well, that'd be kind of funny if you got it. Okay, let's talk about Manassas, where we're parked, the mothership here tonight. Amazing story, incredible battle, July of 1861. Can you just quickly set up this battle for us in a historical context?
Sure. Well, it was one of the first major battles of the Civil War, the American Civil War. And it ended up, both sides figured this was going to be a quick and fast and easy war, virtually bloodless. As a matter of fact, some of the politicians brought their wives or their dates out to the fields overlooking the battle so that they could watch a battle. They figured it's going to be the first and last battle of the war, might as well watch it.
Yeah.
Well, it ended up in a complete Union rout, and the Confederates actually won on that first battle. And as fate would have it, there were actually two battles at Manassas. Then in August of 1862, there was another battle in virtually the same battlefield.
Right.
And so you had, it's almost as if the place was fated to be a battlefield when you end up with two of them on virtually the same spot.
Yeah.
So, and of course there were some classic ghost stories associated with Manassas. And then I got some EVP and interesting things for the book, Civil War Ghost Trails.
Right. Now, the Stone House. Tell us about the legend. We have a picture. There it is, the Stone House in Manassas. Unique legend to this one.
Well, the Stone House has, it had been a number of things, a tavern, a residence, several public facilities in there. And one of the strangest things, and I got a letter from somebody that actually had experienced this, is that she was driving through there one night, late at night, and as she's driving by, she knew she lived in the area, so she knew the crossroads. And as she's driving by, she looked up, and the Stone House was gone.
Yeah.
It wasn't there. And she said, "Oh my God, what happened? It was a very famous house. Did they have to tear it down? Are they going to reconstruct it or what?" Later on that night, she's driving back, and it had reappeared. And that's not the only time that I'd heard that legend about the Stone House disappearing. As well, people have been pushed around. One fellow got virtually thrown out the door by unseen hands. And park rangers who have been working in the basement, in fact, a good friend of mine worked there at Manassas, they were down in the cellar, and they were hearing footsteps upstairs. And they're like, "You did lock the door, right?" And yeah, I'd locked the door. Well, then went upstairs, and nobody was there, and all the doors are locked. So they couldn't explain that.
Yeah, no, incredible stuff. And these battlefields resonate. I mean, we know what took place there, and I think that really sets the stage for why there's so much activity. Let's get a little closer to Gettysburg. Let's start with the Cashtown Inn. Can you kind of set up the Cashtown Inn and its role in the Battle of Gettysburg?
The Cashtown Inn, one of the original owners of the Cashtown Inn claimed that more Confederate generals walked through that door than almost any other door in America, except perhaps for one of the public buildings down in Richmond. And I believe him, because 3/4 of the Confederate Army passed through Cashtown on their way to Gettysburg. Mm-hmm. A.P. Hill had his headquarters there. Lee was there for a while. And so people were going in and out. Various aides and assistants and adjutant generals were moving in and out of that place. And it was a pretty important spot. And now, of course, it's a bed and breakfast and a great restaurant. But we do paranormal investigations with on weekends.
Yep.
Certain weekends called Mysterious Journeys weekends, in cooperation with the Cashtown Inn. And we got some very, very interesting evidence.
Yeah, and we're going to show you some of those photographs. Tell us about this photo. What's going on here?
Is that the very first photo?
That's the first one, yep.
Okay, this was taken with a game cam or a trail cam, which is an infrared camera. And this is actually a picture taken at, and the best part about it is that it tells you exactly what time it's the date and time stamp.
Yep.
Are you sure this is the first one, or this one should be 5 minutes after?
I'm sorry, maybe, can we pull up the second one, Eric? Let's see what that looks like. Was that the first? Sorry.
It's back. Yeah, you were right.
All right. We were right.
That one is a picture, yes, I see him now, of Jack Palladino. He owns the place, and because of the Liquor Control Board in Pennsylvania, he has to lock up his bar every night. So he locked this bar up, and it's time-stamped 35 minutes after the hour, after midnight. And he locked it up. He does it the same way every night, goes out the door to the right. The camera then was in there all by itself. All the lights were off. The place was locked up. And something tripped the camera 9 minutes later, at 44 minutes after midnight, and that's the next photograph.
Here we go. Oh, wow. Okay. Very interesting.
I try and analyze these, and I try and and question everybody. I am 99.99999% sure this is a photograph of a ghost.
Amazing. And I mean, of course, the Cashtown Inn, lots and lots of stories pour out of there again and again. But this isn't all. You also sent us an EVP, electronic voice phenomena, a recording, a spirit voice. Let's play it and then talk about it. We'll play it one more time. This is the first one at the Cashtown Inn. Take a listen.
Andrew, will you speak with me? Andrew, what state are you from?
Yeah, I mean, you hear, especially at the end, Andrew, what state are you from? Mississippi. I mean, you really hear that.
Yeah, we were in the cellar of the Cashtown Inn doing the EVP work, and it was very quiet. I had the recorder on voice activation, and we had picked up on a Confederate soldier named Andrew, and you could hear the 4 syllables, Mississippi, and it really came out pretty clear. The first part of that is a little rough and rugged. You don't really know what they're saying, which is pretty typical of most EVP. But I think Mississippi comes out pretty clearly.
All right, let's play it one more time real quick.
Andrew, will you speak with me? Andrew, what state are you from?
Mississippi. Wow. Very wild stuff. Mark, hold tight. We got to take a quick break for the news, and we'll be right back.
Over the past few weeks, state wildlife officials in Utah have been receiving reports about a mysterious goat man seen following the herds of wild goats that live on the mountains in the northern part of the state. Authorities were not only puzzled by the man's behavior, they were also concerned for his safety. After these strange reports made it into the local news, the goat man came forward and contacted state wildlife officials with his reasons for following the goats in their natural habitat. Apparently, he is a hunter who was preparing for a bow hunt of wild mountain goats in California and was trying out a goat suit in order to get close to the herd. The man was told that the goats in northern Utah are easier to stalk and get close to, so he felt the area would be ideal for testing the effectiveness of his homemade costume made up of a hooded painter's suit and a fleece. Or maybe he's just a very lonely man. In other news, NASA has discovered that the planet Mars has a hole. While reviewing recent photographs taken by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter of the Pavonis Mons volcano, scientists noticed a hole which appears to be an opening to an underground cavern. The opening has been determined to be about 35 meters across and some 20 meters deep. One strange aspect is the opening is surrounded by a large circular crater. Just how large the cavern might be is open for speculation, but the possibilities of what may be found inside makes it a prime destination for a future robotic probe, or even better, human exploration. I just hope the first guy in isn't wearing a red shirt. That never ends well. I'm Andrew Lake, and oddly, that was the news.
And we're back. Thank you, Andrew. We're talking about Civil War ghost trails with author Mark Nesbitt. And Mark, thank you for joining us tonight. There's so much to cover. I mean, I'm sure you could write 20 volumes of this book again and again. You've written God knows how many about Gettysburg. What are you up to, 14 now, just Gettysburg?
There's 7 of the storybooks, 1 field guide on how to do ghost investigations there.
Yeah.
I forgot, Jeff.
Yeah. No, I understand. No, but that's amazing. You know, it's like we said, you can go on and on because there's so many people that come to these hallowed grounds to have experiences. All right, let's get a little closer to home for you. Your Gettysburg headquarters, where the ghost house, where you launch your tours, also haunted. I mean, incredible. This whole entire town. Can you set that up for us quickly, and then we're going to show this photo by Jeff Ritzman. But tell us about the haunting there.
Okay, well, when I bought the place, I didn't know that it was haunted. I asked the people who had rented the place, and they said, well, we've heard some weird noises and things like that, but we don't think it's haunted. Well, as we, continued to occupy the place and had our workers in there, all of a sudden they started having experiences. And we have some resident spirits, Mrs. Kitzmiller, who owned the place longer than anybody. We have Hank, who's a Civil War soldier who goes on duty. But we also have children in the place. And Jeff Ritzman and his group, his paranormal investigating group, came in one night and stayed overnight. And of course, classically, they set up their cameras in the front, and they heard children playing in the back. Mm-hmm. So they tore everything down, took stuff into the back, and heard children playing in the front.
Right.
You've been through this, right?
Sure, yeah.
So finally, Jeff says, well, I'm just going to set up the camera in the middle room and take a bunch of pictures into the back room. And about 2 or 2:30 in the morning, he got a photograph of what I think is one of the child ghosts there.
There it is. That's pretty remarkable. I mean, little legs, little arms. I mean, that's wow. I mean, does this make you nervous? You live there some of the time, right? I mean, what are your thoughts when you see it?
Not really, because when you do, I've collected over 1,000 stories, 1,200 stories, and of all those stories, only one ghost actually hurt someone, and that was down at Baltimore at Fort McHenry. Mm-hmm. So the fact of the you getting physically hurt by a ghost, as you know, is pretty doggone rare. And you and I do this stuff all the time, and I'm more worried about falling through a rotten floor than I am,
right.
A ghost attacking me.
Yeah, no, understood. All right, so battlefields are places with a lot of energy, a lot of trauma. Our own Sarah, the resident psychologist, it's good to have one on every ship. Sarah, talk to us about the mindset. I mean, all I could think of is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. What are these soldiers going through? Do you think that lends itself to making these places so energized? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And for those of you that aren't familiar with PTSD, I mean, basically all you have to do is be either experienced or witness to a traumatic event. Now, obviously, war, without a doubt, is a traumatic event. And what happens to many people is after they've experienced this, they continue to re-experience it over and over again. It might be even flashbacks where they think they're right back there again. It affects everything. It affects their biological conditions, like they can't sleep anymore, they're always hypervigilant, they get angry, they can't concentrate, they have nightmares. So these things stay with people for years and years, some indefinitely. So, I mean, it speaks to argue that you can say that the same effect happen to maybe those that have passed on? Maybe their souls are still continuing to respond to the same trauma that they never were able to kind of get out of their system before they passed, or maybe even the environment itself was affected with the imprint of that trauma that keeps getting relived over and over again. I mean, who knows? No one really understands why it's able to do this.
Right.
Or why your mind is even able to, seriously, like you think that you're back in the battlefield again, even when you're in your own living room, just because you heard like a car door slam. Like you think it's a mortar, and you're like ducking under the couch. I mean, there's something to be said for that. If your mind can do that, then why can't it also affect you beyond life, too,
sure.
Or even the environment around you. So I don't know what Mark thinks about that, or if that has anything to do, with some of the explanation of these things.
Yeah, Mark, when I hear about...
That's a great thought, because, the whole idea of a ghost is that our personality survives, a survival theory, that it goes on beyond the life of our body. And if your personality was so affected in this life that you carry it with you, it certainly would make sense that you'd want to return to these places and try and work that out, that post-traumatic stress syndrome. The other thing is also there's a lot of electromagnetism that happens when you die. There is I talk about it in the book. They've studied the human body, people when they're dying, and they found out that you release 1,000 times more electromagnetism than normally. We normally give off a lot of electromagnetism anyhow. Sometimes it shows up as an aura. Not to mention the fact that when human bones break, it gives off a piezoelectric effect. It basically a spark, an electromagnetic charge. Is this captured in the environment, especially a quartz-rich environment like Gettysburg is? That sounds silly, but I mean, I'm talking to you on on a computer,
Sure.
and what's holding the memory is silicon,
Right.
quartz. So it certainly makes sense that. Now the question is, how do we manipulate the environment so that we can get these images at will whenever we want, and we can study them? Right now, they just seem to be haphazard and random. So there's our big challenge, Jeff, is how to manipulate the environment to get those to replay for us.
Right. Now, when you hear about PTSD, the first thought you think of is that, in the paranormal world, we call that a residual haunting. That's a living person haunted by something that really did happen, but it's not there now. Yet it replays again and again and again. It's the first thing I thought of. Yet we get experiences and evidence like EVP that respond to a question. That's not a movie playing over and over again. This is something interactive. Let's play another EVP. This one is also from the Ghost House in Gettysburg, your tour headquarters. Take a listen to this clip.
This is Kit Miller. I understand you didn't like our little tiny cookies the other night. You don't like those?
I hate them right at the end. Why do you give a ghost bad cookies, Mark? That's just rude.
Well, Mrs. Kitzmiller and my wife Carol have been fighting for years now because Mrs. Kitzmiller is from the Victorian era, and she thought that whenever we brought guests into the ghost house, we were to give them tea and cookies. So Carol got some, I don't know where she found them, some really crummy cookies and set them out. And she said, maybe that'll make her happy. So I asked Mrs. Kitzmiller, what did you think of the cookies? And she said, I hate them.
So, it begs the question, when this stuff gets to be interactive, we're no longer talking about... I think residual haunting makes a lot of people very comfortable, because it's just, okay, it's a traumatic event replaying again and again. That's fine. Nobody gets hurt. But a spirit still hanging around all these years later, that starts to make us a little shifting in our seats, like why are they still here? The EVP lend us to think that this is something interactive. Where do you think it's coming from?
Well, in the environment that we're in, this was Mrs. Kitzmiller's house. If her personality lives on after her body died, certainly she'd be there, and that would be her expression of displeasure with us. Now, exactly how they do it, in other words, since we don't hear EVP when it's being recorded, is a little bit of a mystery, except for the fact that maybe it is that electromagnetic residue that we continue to have after we die, which I think is pretty well proven.
Sure.
With various photographs and videos and obviously audio tapes. So.
Right, understood. Matt Moniz, real quick, I know you've captured a bunch of EVP. You too, Andrew. What are your thoughts when you hear something that's actually interactive? Do you throw the whole residual haunting out the window at that point, or do you keep looking? What's your thought?
My thought is, why can't it be both?
Okay.
Yeah, I go with the intelligent residual, but we don't have enough time to go into it, but I feel residual isn't just a film playing out. I've gotten some EVPs recently where it's been a direct response to myself and the investigators in an environment, Rhode Island. So I feel there is a lot of personality to these hauntings.
And I think I know the reason why you don't hear an EVP, but an electronic recorder does. Because what we hear is our voices knocking air molecules along, whereas in their being electromagnetic based, the frequency is picked up by the microphone at the electromagnetic level, and that transfers onto the tape.
Right on. Guys, we are right up against the end of the show. The name of the book is Civil War Ghost Trails. You can find out more information about all the great stuff Mark has going on from our website. We'll have links to his. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on the new book. It's great. I'm sure you can have volume 2 and 3 and 10 and 30, if you continue on this way. Really appreciate you being here, Mark. Until next time, everyone, stay odd. Yeah.